Welcome, Wargamers, to the dense forests of Elpis in the Legacy of Atmos universe, because today we are talking about Ashala, the seventh daughter of Athal. And one thing I'd like to add right up top, if you like this video and you're interested in this universe, please consider hopping over to the Discord specifically for this game. Me and the other two co-founders have just released the newest edition of the game, and we are doing all kinds of demos and support and answering questions, all that kind of stuff, so you can plug in and be a part of this community immediately and get gaming. All the relevant links for the website, the artwork, and the Discord are in the description down below. Now, for those of you who are new to Legacy of Atmos, first of all, huge welcome. This game opens up on an ever-brewing conflict between humanity and the denizens of the forests, known as, collectively, the Tellus Commune. But there's a great deal of mystery surrounding these forest folk, and our goal today is to start to unravel it by examining one of the titular characters of the Tellus Commune. I speak, of course, of Ashala, the seventh daughter of Athal. Now let's pause and kind of unpack that name, because even in just describing her name and title, there's a lot there. Athal, or Athal, depending on how you want to pronounce it, for those of you who don't know, is the Sol Star god who created the planet of Elpis, where all of this is taking place, after the devastation that was the War of Creation. Athal went into hiding amongst the stars, seeking a chance to create new life, to foster it to a level of enlightenment so that he may have comrades in basically pushing back the darkness, i.e. the forces of desolation. And so to do this, he constructed this planet, Elpis, which is essentially a colossal incubator for complex life. And I'm being a bit serious here when I say incubator, right? Many of the regions on the planet could be considered isolated environments to keep quote-unquote experiments separate, usually through geographic means, mountains, oceans, that kind of thing. But as any good scientist knows, you can't just create an experiment and leave it. You need a way to monitor and control variables that will always come up. Enter the first living creations on Elpis, the early edition of the Tellus Commune, the Athal Guardians, and the very first daughter of Athal, and the tree folk along with them. These were designed to be the keepers of the planet, this one race with true communion with Athal in order to monitor this grand experiment and enact his will should any one species or experiment get out of control. And in this way, we have a faction that is twofold. They are the sole race that is able to communicate directly with their creator, but also the ones that destroy and reset this creation when needed. And when I say collectively, I speak about them as one unified body. They are a somewhat loose organizational structure, right? Basically, it's just tree folk arranged by size and the amount of autonomy that they have, where the daughters of Athal sit firmly at the top of this hierarchy as both the interpreters of their god's will and the shapers of his planet. Now, it's important to note here that I've been talking about this in almost scientific terms of what Athal wants to do on the planet. The Tellus Commune do not view this as a quote-unquote experiment. To them, this is their religion. They're talking to their god, and they have a divine mission to enforce and enact his will. They don't see the greater picture necessarily of the fact that, you are fostering life. You are essentially the bumpers that complex life has to bump up against. But all those things are related to, the Tellus Commune as a whole, but there's much more going on here than just forest hippies. Because Ashala, in particular, is somewhat unusual amongst the daughters of Athal, and as a result has a larger part to play in the coming Tellus Crusade, that huge war that's been brewing up for our main story arc. Ashala, like every daughter of Athal, began life as an Eldasa. This is sort of like a traditional forest nymph type thing, extremely long-lived, and journeys around the Tellus Commune learning the magics of the Crealis. We've talked about these before, essentially the naturally occurring magics that all life brings to the planet. Not only do they spend their time fostering life and trying to grow forests and kind of maintain the status quo, but they also begin to study how to commune with Athal directly, and observing the various creations across the planet. Again, getting a sense of what these isolated races and communities are like. At around 200 years old, Ashala was chosen to ascend to becoming a daughter of Athal. In fact, one of the very youngest to achieve such an honor. In undergoing a complex ritual at the base of one of Elpis's soul trees, Ashala's essence was infused with the divine power and magnified tenfold. And at this point, her studies switch from merely observing life and trying to maintain it, and now to a more active role of guiding it. She has a lot more power and a lot more responsibility, and as such, she kind of takes a sort of mentee position under a mentor named Thalia, the fourth daughter of Athal. So we have this, young up-and-coming, or I should say upstart, hero within the Tellus Commune going around discovering her power, kind of channeling it and seeing what she can do with it to manipulate the creation around her. But what is her motivation within this story arc? Well, it was during this training period that events grew very dark and worrisome on Elpis. A young upstart race called humanity was beginning to tap into magics that they really weren't ready for. Almost as if they had reached a technological maturity before an emotional one to go with it. This technology that was above their grasp was astromancy, and also along with that is the tinkering with the cryalis, which we've talked about before. This crossing of the line set the Tellus Commune into action, where they launched the first Telnar War. And this is a kind of a defining moment for humanity, because the Tellus Commune first invades the Atmos Federation and just annihilates huge swaths of the land. However, humanity, with now its technology and sort of a galvanized, uniform government of trying to push back the invader, demonstrated to the Tellus Commune that they are more than just some other species on this planet. Humans have, unknown to them, evolved to a point where they could take a punch. Right? And so this war happens and the invaders come in from the woods. Okay, we're going to clear this experiment out. Humanity is just not working. It seems like a dud. But what happens if the experiment has a mind of its own and enough staying power to draw a line in the sand? So at this point, from the first Telnar War, the denizens of the Tellus Commune are pushed back into the woods by humanity and their constructs and weapons. And after that first war, a very fractious peace began to foster between the two, because now they kind of know what the level is. They understand each other in terms of what kind of power they can bring to bear, and no one's trying to claim lands or anything like that. But this peace, rather than being annihilated, is more because the Tellus Commune and the daughters of Athal, they have no idea what to do. They've never seen anything like this before, and they're desperate to try and commune with their deity, but he's not responding at the moment. So rather than destabilizing the entire experiment, whatever this burgeoning race called man is, the daughters of Athal thought, okay, here's what we'll do. We'll make peace and contain them into their little region, and we'll just kind of keep the rest of the project, meaning everything else on this planet, going, and we will deal with the humans when Athal gets back to us. Which makes a lot of sense. They're a civilization that's dependent on orders from on high. The problem is, Athal never got back to them. And it's been 25 years since that first Telnar War. They established a very crude sort of peace where leaders would come together in a field on their borders and just kind of discuss, things like, what the boundaries are, deforestation, what they're studying, that kind of thing. And at one point in these regular peace talks between the Atmos Federation and the Tellus Commune, High Lord Godre Ronin strikes down Thalia, the fourth daughter Athal, in a fit of rage. As a small bit of backstory before we do a dedicated video on Ronin, essentially during that first Telnar War, his entire family was wiped out. He's the heir apparent of the entire Ronin household. He lost everything in this. So it was a lot of pent-up anger and aggression regarding, the actions of the Tellus Commune against his family, and he got some revenge. However, the psychic backlash of losing a daughter of Athal, being so connected with the soul trees and the planets and its magics, was tremendous. And from leagues away, the apprentice Ashala was pained by her mentor's death screams, and she immediately moved over to be near the Atmos Federation. So that is her personal motivation. She's like, somebody killed my mentor, my friend, my equal, amongst in a civilization where there are almost no equals to a daughter of Athal, right? I mean, this is one of the very few. There's 7 of them total. You killed one of us. There's going to be hell to pay. And so that's who she is and why she's here. But what is she like? Like, why is it bad news for a daughter of Athal to get angry? Simply put, when you and I go for a walk in the woods, we can observe a lot of life, right? You got birds, squirrels, deer, bigger stuff, some predatory animals if you live near mountains, that kind of thing. And we understand that some of this life is dangerous, predatory animals, and some of it's just fine, benign, like squirrels and that kind of thing. But as much life as you and I can see and take note of, there is nearly infinitely more of it. Because it's easy to forget that even immovable things like trees and fungus and grass and worms underground and all that kind of thing are still actively alive. And now the question is, what if all of those things, capital A, the animals, the trees, the worms underground, everything, wanted to kill you? What if every beast stalked you from the shadows? Every tree bent and bowed to claw at your throat. The muck of the mud tried to swallow you whole. And on top of that, life that you could never have conceived of springs at you. Sentient trees, camouflaged by their regular kin, stab down with colossal swords. Or hundreds and thousands of smaller life forms called saplings rip and tear and pull at you when you're on the ground and then just start ripping you apart. Huge roots within the earth, too deep for you to have ever known about, roar upwards and tear buildings apart. Every map you've ever made becomes irrelevant because the roads can be swallowed by forests. It's not just nature unleashed, right? So much of what we call nature doesn't have a will. Sure, animals forage or hunt, but trees not so much. But when a daughter of Athal is nearby, she becomes the will for all, capital A, all life in her area. And it's one of the key players that just got really, really mad at humanity for taking the life of a loved one. Now, why is this so cool? I like to end all my videos asking this simple question. One, she is one of my favorite models. Ashala is an absolutely beautiful sculpt with 2D art as well to go with her, and she just has this presence about her that is so regal, but also very alien, and that's something that I think is conveyed truly well through the sculpt and the artwork. Nature magics are some of my absolute favorite things that you see. I mean, I've mentioned this in other games as well, but the idea of just life bursting forth, trees erupting from the ground, and, roots that you didn't know about upending buildings, like that kind of stuff is so appealing to me because it's just, you have to just stand there with your jaw open, agape at the vast power that nature contains. And it does contain it. It's just a matter of having a will behind it to use it. And taking all of that fury and that power and kind of putting it on the fact that she's still very young. She's impetuous. She's very personally upset by the events that have just transpired. She lost her mentor and friend, one of 7 of the daughters of Athal. And what's interesting to me is that she acts just like a mirror, in a sort of way, to High Lord Godry Ronan. If you remember, the first Telnar War happens, his whole family's wiped out, he becomes the heir to the throne. He gets mad, that personal injustice, that devastating rage of what's been taken from him leads him to kill Thalia, the 4th daughter of Athal. This is that same thing mirrored back. They're both young, impetuous, they want to make a mark on the world with a very personal anger and grudge towards the other. Now, of course, I've mentioned multiple times here there are up to 7 daughters of Athal. She's one of many of them, and we will unveil them later, but Ashala is in charge of the forces that are currently dealing with the Atmos Federation. The others are still trying to commune with Athal over long periods of time. It takes a lot of time and energy to be able to commune with him. It seems to be ineffective at the moment, but right now they need someone on the ground making things happen to contain humanity. And this is her role, and she does it in a brutally effective way. On the tabletop, she plays the exact same way. She brings life all around her, bursting forth from trees. There's little saplings running around. It's some of the most fun you can have in this game, so I would encourage you to come check that out through the links in the Discord down below. Thank you so much for watching and listening to this Legacy of Atmos lore video. If you have any questions about the setting, or there's any topics that you would like discussed to get more involved with it, go ahead and leave those in the comments down below and I will use them as content in future videos. Thank you so much, and happy wargaming.